Hello, and welcome to another session of White Feathers Counsel of Men. We are sponsored by the Trinity Episcopal Church in Charlottesville, Virginia. My name is Warren Hammonds, one of the co-hosts. I'm here with my partner,
Philip White. Hi.
Hello, Philip.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
And it's good to have you with us or listening maybe after we broadcast this. We are interested in our session today. We're going to play around with some very important words that are taken from our Constitution or our Declaration of Independence. I don't know which one they all come from, but we were intrigued several weeks ago when we began to talk about some things that unfolded during a couple of our other weeks when we may have referred to letters of Dr. King or quotes of Dr. King and other folks who have been on the on the side of racial rights throughout the years. And we've realized that there's a dichotomy between what might have been said 60 years ago, 40 years ago, and many years ago, and what is still happening now, and that struggle that we still face, of course, with racism, with inequality, with injustice. So we became sort of intrigued with some of the phrases: land of the free, justice for all, and are really wondering how true that can be. And maybe it isn't. So as a jumping board, we have two articles that we'll refer to. One is actually written by a high school student fairly recently. His name is Javon Kay, and goes to a high school in Michigan. And he questions, are we really the land of the free? And we'll unpack that a little bit, but it's interesting that this high schooler is already beginning to realize that it may not be this one nation may not be quite the nation that is written about at some point. Right. And another quick article, it's about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but written by a professor at Texas A&M about Dr. King's push toward, if we really want racial equality, the system has to change. So he gets at systemic racism. So we're going to sort of bridge those two. So we have a teenager on one hand, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the other hand to sort of help us guide the conversation. And we hope you'll be interested in that discussion, and it'll be give you some things to think about as far as your life and your direction, and how we live out Martin Luther King's dream, or how we still struggle with the fact that it may not be the land of the free for all.
Yeah.
How about you take it from here?
Yeah, it's quite interesting when Warren shared the article about the teenager, Javon. I had these thoughts of James Baldwin. James Baldwin has been such a specific person in regard to his writings and thoughts of growing up and living in America over the years, and he's followed by so many people in reference to his writings that are really important even to this day. And then with Dr. King's writings in regard to the structural racism that's in the country, and it just speaks to. I was listening to this Urban View program a couple of days ago, and this professor was speaking about, most people think about if there's going to be some major revolution in the country, it's going to come from those that don't have. But most of and her research speaks to the point that when there is an uprising in America, it's usually from those that are at the top, who's trying to hold on to what they have. In that sense of sharing the wealth and the riches of this country has never been an easy thing to do. By even going back to the time after slavery, when President Lincoln and others in Congress at that point made the recommendations that all former slaves could get 40 acres and a mule. But then that was shot down. And then whatever they tried to have some sense of tranquility within their communities, many times they were resulted to being burnt down or riots and all kinds of stuff to the people. And just, history is just filled with all kinds of events that make people question, are we the land of the free? I had a decent conversation with Warren several months ago about how I, as an African-American father of a teenage boy, when my son was a teenage boy, I had to talk with him. And throughout our culture as African-Americans growing up in America, all of us know about the talk that you have to have, which primarily with your boys. And Warren was so clear and say, perfect, I never had to have that kind of conversation with my son. So we recognize that there is such structural differences that we have to navigate ourselves around in America as an African-American black male and as a white male. And so, so that's what we want to try to unpack today, to bring some reality and some truth to the table, so we can begin to say, well, where do we go from here? And I was just thrilled about this young man, and he made me think of James Baldwin in his writing. So there is hope. There's always hope. It's always somebody that's going to come around that's going to stimulate our thoughts about just where we are as a country and where we need to try to go to reach that perfect union that we talk about all the time.
Yeah. I'll throw out a few of the nuggets from maybe the articles that hit me strong. One of the things that hit me just in general about the teenagers article is the fact that it is from a teenager, and that he is already so sensitive and aware and moved by what the nation isn't,
right?
And he sees it already. So here's just some of the things that he says. He quotes that. Well, he says it states, our Declaration of Independence states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, of course it says all men at that point, but all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then he goes on just to say, my purpose for quoting this is because, and then he starts listing what he sees in the society. I quote this because black men in America today face many hardships. Police brutally beat black men because they say they're scared of them or whatever. Black men are being put in jail and prison much more commonly and much more aggressively than any others. So he asks, how can black people pursue happiness when it seems the government wants to see them fail? So is he right or wrong? Well, he's right in his own estimation because that's what he feels. How can a black person pursue happiness when it seems the government wants to see them fall? So then I point to King. King's article says, justice for black people will not flow into this society merely from court decisions nor from fountains of political oratory. White America must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure in our society. So they're not talking about just namby-pamby changes at the local level.
Right.
One says the government wants me to fail, and the other one says we must change the whole structure of our society. So that's where some of the parallels are.
When we talk about, we use terms like the structure has to change. But right under that term, we're talking about people. We're talking about men and women that are in positions of making decisions that governs the country as a whole. It's just people, right? And the term of there's 1,000 miles between your head and your heart. And how does people get to a sense of a common connection, regardless of race? I think is the biggest barrier that America has not found a comfortable way to address. We just want to, you can't, we talk about history a lot because history always seems to come back up. And like with this high school kid that's talking about stuff that Martin Luther King talked about in this article in 1967, and we go back to Baldwin, you go back Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington. You can go all the way back. to the 1800s, probably earlier than that, that these questions have been asked about how is America going to become a perfect union? Very symbolic term, but what are we doing to reach that? Mm-hmm. Here we are today, looking at our Congress, which is a mess. Just looking at where Congress is today, who should be public servants. And I think sometimes we don't hear that term used a lot when we talk about people in Congress, but they're public servants. They are there to serve the people, from the president's office right on down to Congress and the Senate. All there to be servants of the people. But they get there, and I think they get there. They're almost like, what was that movie? Oh, God, no. I can't think of the actor's name, but he went to Congress, and he went there with this grand idea of just being a person to serve his state and serve his people, his constituents. And he got there and realized that all these deals are being made and how you can fill up your pockets with cash and get all these ways of privileges and stuff like that. And it's almost like people may go to Congress. Sometimes I always say to myself, that's a position I would never want to find myself in, trying to be somebody that's in Congress now, because you almost have to compromise your convictions as a person. Or you do like so many people who's been in Congress, you don't hear from them until they retire or step away from it. Then they speak from their heart. But while they're there, they just march like tour soldiers to whatever is being done. Even if it's wrong, everybody knows it's wrong, but they're afraid to speak the truth about it. So where does the sense of courage, the sense of honesty, the sense of how can you be a public servant but you're not serving the public? And I think that's one of the challenges I think that we have is when we talk about the structural changes that need to be made. Bottom line, we're talking about the changes in people.
Yeah, and the writer of the Remembrance of Kings speeches, this professor from Texas A&M, and his name is Fagan, Joe Fagan, by the way, and he sort of does point the finger harshly. So you're right. What is going to make the change? Well, what's brought us to this point is white privilege. What has brought us to this point is white oppression. So he points the finger. I mean, and he says, we whites created slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and contemporary racial discrimination for over 400 plus years now.
Yeah.
So, therefore, whites are the main racial villains in this story and have most of the political and social power. So that's where the privilege comes in. We have the most political and social power to change the racial discrimination and inequality now. So, so it's not ignoring the black person's role in this. We have to work together.
Right.
But he points the finger at saying, where is it going to really move who is needed to really start this needle moving better and quicker and deeper?
Yeah.
So he's quite clear.
Yeah.
He talks from a white perspective, so he knows that. And the teenager almost echoes the same thing when he talks about all the inequities that he sees on black society, on black men.
Yeah.
And it's what we've talked about before. How can people of color feel like this is a land of the free if when they look at so many inequities in the housing structure, so many of our homeless persons are persons of color, and of course there are some that are white. When there's so many inequities in the educational system, where the graduation rates differ so greatly, and we've quoted some of these stats before. So when those are the kinds of aspects in society that point toward all of that difference, how can you say that there is justice for all and that this is a land for all of us to be free?
That's
the question that they both raise.
And it's I think it was Patrick Moynihan, a congressman years ago, that identified he was speaking specifically about black males, and that's when he coined all black males in America as an endangered species. That was years ago when Patrick Moynihan mentioned that. And for those of us that fathers and mothers that find ourselves in that position of about to give birth to a son, it does create a certain sense of excitement, but a certain sense of grave concern.
Yeah.
You know, as to how do you help your son navigate from being a toddler to a child, and once they hit those teenage years, it has to deal with the reality that they are different. You know, and it's a it's a reality that all parents that has to raise, particularly a son, a black son, that you hope he can, once he get his first taste of oppression or racism or some difference, how does that sink into his subconscious mind? You know, does he value a sense of himself, or does he try to imitate? What do you do once that that reality hits them? And it's a tough question. It's a tough question for parents to have to deal with. But we've been dealing with it for a long time.
But they must see that oppression pretty soon, pretty early in life. I mean, he knew to write about it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is LaVon even toys around with the origination of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Of course, saying at one point we need to get back to the founding fathers' words, and then he realizes, well, honestly, we have to go off of better ideals than what the founding fathers had, and what we can now make new ideals, because the founding fathers were slave owners.
Yeah.
So that wasn't going to get past him.
Yeah.
They were the same ones who did not treat black men as equals and dehumanizing them then.
Right.
So how can we speak so highly on the ideals set by those founding fathers when that was their position in their society? Again, privilege.
Yeah.
They could write anything on a piece of paper.
Right.
Of course, we want all men created equal, because that's all we see right here. White slave-owning men. So LaVon's article is a pretty good jumping board to at least have us question what is the nation at a point that we can really say land of the free, and justice for all.
Yeah, you know, and it doesn't leave out. As far as the founding fathers and their writings of this Constitution back in the 1800s, because they were basically speaking from their privileges and their positions of power. Yeah. Because even if a white person at that point, if they quote unquote were not a landowner, they too were considered less than. You see, and there were history speaks about this, that there were many whites that worked for other white families, but they were considered indentured servants. Slaves were slaves, but indentured servants could have been a white family that didn't have the wealth that these other privileged white folks had. And I think that's the key. The privileged white folks were the ones that were making these types of decisions with the Constitution. Every man that was given credit with the Constitution, as you say, were landowners. They had reached that pinnacle of success, I guess, so to speak. So, and even to this day, when you look at Congress, it's jam-packed with men, particularly white men. So we haven't changed in a real way.
I think we had those stats on one of our shows a month or so ago. We called attention to how lacking persons of color is in the.
And I think it was it's been stated many times from various females that are in Congress that they feel that Congress would eventually become a better functional place if there's more women that are in government, rather than just having a bunch of men, particularly white men.
Yeah. So. I'll say a few things, and then you can charge us off. I think we're about done. I think, but in the King referenced article, this writer just agree at one point is not quoting King, but it's something from King said and argued and then he says, white people must begin to walk in the pathways of their black brothers and feel some of the pain and hurt that throb inside. That's empathy. Yeah. We can't do it by ourselves. Right. We need your help. I need your help for me to better understand the depth of that pain, how you walk your daily life, how it feels, and you've shared some of that. I remember you recalling when you saw police officers when you were young, you didn't think they were on your side. That's well, right. I did. Right. You know, that's a difference that we had. So white people must begin to walk in the pathways of black brothers and sisters and feel some of the pain. Right. Feel that pain and hurt that we've caused or that we've at least let keep going in our world. And then I'll end my comments with another James Baldwin. You referred to him and how we need each other. Right. Because there is more of a positive element to this because I think we can move the needle. Right. We can make progress. We, the black and white, deeply need each other here if we are really to become one nation. If we are really, that is, to achieve our identity, our maturity as men and women, and as one nation. So we need each other. And even the high schoolers article points to the fact that we need to get along better. We need to talk more and listen to one another in order to change society. I'll leave it with that, and you can say the final words and read us off.
It's always interesting that with each generation in America, there seems to be a little bit more courage to address certain structural issues that we have in this country. And I was listening to, I can't remember which program it was, but it was speaking about this group of teenagers that have filed a lawsuit I think at the federal level about climate change. That they filed this suit saying that their parents and their grandparents and the adult generation that is now in function and duties of everything is not doing enough to preserve the climate for them. So by the time they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, if the climate, because most scientists are saying, if the climate in America continues on its course, it's going to get hotter. We're going to have such unpredictable weather. And they say, most scientists say this has been coming for many, many years. We just didn't pay attention to it. And that these kids, these young kids have filed this suit claiming that the government needs to do more to protect the climate. So they putting responsibilities on this dysfunctional Congress that we have from the president's office on down, that you folks owe us. You owe us to give us an opportunity to live in a country that's free from all kinds of toxic chemicals and pollutants that you have created.
Well, maybe that's what Levon is saying in his article.
Yeah.
The government needs to give us a nation where all are free. Yeah. Where there is justice for all. Maybe that's what he's saying.
And in a way, you're right. And I think just see his
we're led
work,
by little ones.
Yeah, we're led by ones. Yeah, you're right. They are the future of this country, and we all know that. All of the folks in Congress now, 30, 40 years from now, every last one of them are going to be gone or retired or somewhere sitting in a nursing home somewhere. But they're not going to be in Congress. Yeah. But these young folks, they are the next leaders of this country. So I feel refreshed when I hear about articles like his article, the kid in high school, and these kids now that have come together to file this suit to bring attention to this country is failing us, in regard to us. So how we go. So, that's always those better angels that are among us. We talk about better angels all the time. And how that gives me a sense of hope that it's always going to be a group that's not going to be going to march to the same drum beat. They're going to create their own drum beat. you know, just based on where they are at the stage of their lives, to see that we can do this a little better than what you did, mom and dad, and speak about it, you know. And I think that's refreshing. That America is still a very fragile country in so many ways. And you always throughout history, you're always going to have those that make a lot of noise, get a lot of attention. But that attention is short-lived after a while. Because I think there's a foundation of people in America that you'll never hear from, you'll never see in a television interview. They're just good, decent people. They just don't seek attention. You know, they try to just do right in their own way. But how we can take that kindness and goodness and compassion, like we was talking about with the governor from Utah that spoke about disagree better. You know, where did he get that from? You know, that's from that head to the heart moment that brought him to that point. And the more we can get people to kind of get from the head and get to the heart, then maybe then we can start moving towards this perfect union. You know, how long it's going to take to make it, we may not be around to see it, but I think that's a perfect objective for America to try to reach, is to seek a perfect union. And we hope each of you that take the time to look at this podcast, to ask yourself, you know, what are you doing to be a more compassionate person, to be a person that's seeking to try to gain as much understanding from folks that you may not have interacted with on a daily basis, or just begin to step outside your comfort zone and begin to ask yourself, you know, what can you do to try to help us as a country reach that mark of being a perfect union? And if each of us can do that, then hey, we'll make it better for us as we carry out your life for the time that we have, but we also will make it better for our children. So we thank you. We thank you, and hope that you would take up this challenge in regard to this thing we call the perfect union. We got so many symbolisms around America about united, the greatest country in the world, and just so many things that, it's just, is it really a reality? Is it really a reality for us, or is it just a make-believe masquerade, so to speak? So that's my sermon for today. And we thank you so much.
And that was LaVon's sermon.
That's right.
It certainly wasn't a perfect nation for him. That's right. And he wrote about it.
That's right. And we do hope. I said, I tell him once, one day we'd like to try to interview this young man. And I would love to be able to talk to his parents about, did they have to talk with him at some point. So we may have that opportunity. We're going to try to reach out to him and be able to talk to him and bring him forth to come on the podcast so we can interview him and go from that route. So we thank you. We thank you for being with us this evening. And we'll see you in about 2 weeks right back here again. Thank you so much.